Everyone believed the cat stayed for the end. Until one night changed everything. Cat's letter. My dearest friend, they say cats stay by an elderly owner's bed because we're waiting for death. I wish I could tell everyone how wrong they are. I've been sitting here by Myrtle's bed for 3 nights now, not because I'm waiting for her to die, but because I'm trying to give her a reason to live. My name is Marlowe, and this might be the most important letter I'll ever write. I often wonder if humans understand what we see when we look at them. Do they know we remember every kindness, every gentle touch, every shared moment? Myrtle once told me that animals can't really love the way people do. If only she could see inside my heart now. I came to Myrtle 14 years ago, though it feels like another lifetime. It was the middle of October in Winslow, Maine, and the rain had been falling for 3 straight days. I was soaked through, hungry, and had nowhere to go. The smell of pot roast coming from her kitchen window was what first caught my attention. Her house was the only one on Cedar Lane with lights on that night. I don't know what made me choose her porch, but I'll always be glad I did. Myrtle opened the door and just stared at me for what felt like forever. She was tall, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a loose bun, wearing a faded blue sweater that had seen better days. I remember thinking she looked as lost as I felt. Her husband Frank had passed away only 2 months before, her children lived in different states, and the silence in that house was the kind that swallows you whole. "Well," she said, looking down at me, "I suppose you'd better come in before you catch your death." Those were the first words she ever spoke to me. Not exactly warm, but they were an invitation, and that was all I needed. That first night, she fixed me a plate of leftover pot roast and set up a makeshift bed in the laundry room. She told me firmly that it was just for tonight, but we both knew better. I heard her crying in her bedroom later, the kind of crying that shakes your whole body. I pushed the laundry room door open, it never latched properly, and found my way to her room. I jumped on her bed and curled up beside her. She didn't push me away. Instead, she placed her hand on my back and fell asleep that way. The next morning, she named me Marlowe because, as she put it, "You look like you're always asking for more." She made a vet appointment that same day. The vet guessed I was about 3 years old, told her I was healthy despite being underweight, and asked if she wanted to keep me. Myrtle hesitated only briefly before nodding. On the drive home, she told me, "I guess we both needed someone, huh?" Those early days with Myrtle were quiet ones. She moved slowly around the house, often stopping to stare at Frank's photos or touch his old sweater that still hung by the door. Sometimes she'd forget to eat, and I'd have to meow loudly by my empty food bowl to remind her that we both needed nourishment. Little by little, though, we established routines. Every morning, Myrtle would make her coffee and toast, sharing tiny pieces of buttered crust with me, even though she claimed it wasn't good for cats. She'd talk to me while she did crossword puzzles at the kitchen table, asking me questions like, "7-letter word for contentment, Marlowe." I'd blink slowly at her and she'd smile and say, "Purring, of course." Myrtle had worked as a 3rd-grade teacher before retiring. She had a habit of explaining things to me as if I were one of her students. "The mail comes at 11, Marlowe," or "This is how you make proper chicken soup, Marlowe." I didn't mind. I liked the sound of her voice, the way it grew stronger as the months passed. Tuesdays were market days. Myrtle would put on her good shoes and walk the 6 blocks to Wilson's grocery. When she returned, she always brought me a small piece of roast chicken from the deli counter. "Don't tell Dr. Cooper," she'd whisper, referring to our veterinarian. "He'd say I'm spoiling you." Fridays were when her friend Edith came over for tea. Edith was shorter than Myrtle, with curly white hair and glasses that always slid down her nose. At first, she pretended not to like me. "Cats are so independent," she'd say. "Give me a dog any day." But I caught her sneaking me treats when Myrtle wasn't looking. Eventually, she brought me my own catnip mouse and we became friends. I learned the rhythms of Myrtle's life. How she needed complete silence when reading a mystery novel. How she hummed while folding laundry, always the same tune I couldn't recognize. How she kept Frank's side of the bed made up, perfect and untouched. How sometimes she'd sit in his old recliner and close her eyes, just breathing in whatever trace of him might remain. Spring came, and Myrtle started spending time in her garden. I'd follow her outside, keeping a safe distance from the water hose, but close enough to watch her plant tomatoes and zucchini. She talked more outdoors, telling me about her childhood in Vermont, her first teaching job, how she met Frank at a church picnic when she was 22. He brought the worst potato salad I'd ever tasted, she told me one afternoon while planting marigolds. I married him anyway. She laughed then, a real laugh that reached her eyes, and I realized it was the first time I'd heard that sound from her. By summer, Myrtle had joined a book club at the local library. She'd come home energized, telling me about the discussions and the other ladies, as she called them. Betty thinks Heathcliff was misunderstood. Can you believe that, Marlowe? She'd fix herself a cup of tea and continue these one-sided book discussions while I lounged nearby, content just to watch her come back to life. One evening in August, Myrtle's son David came to visit with his wife and their 2 children. I hid under the bed at first. Too many loud noises, too many unfamiliar hands reaching for me. But after dinner, Sarah, the 7-year-old granddaughter, found me. "I won't hurt you," she whispered, sitting cross-legged on the floor, offering her hand palm up the way Myrtle had taught her. I approached cautiously. When I allowed her to stroke my head, she beamed with pride. Later, I overheard Myrtle telling David, "That cat saved my life, you know. Gave me something to care for when I didn't even want to care for myself." Years passed this way, comfortable and predictable. Myrtle got older, moving a little slower each winter but always bouncing back in spring. I got older too, less interested in chasing the birds outside the window, more content to find the warm spots in the house. We settled into middle age together, Myrtle and I. On my 10th birthday, or what Myrtle had designated as my birthday, April 15th, tax day, because, as she joked, "You're the only deduction I have left," she got me a special cushion for the windowsill. "So you can watch your bird television in comfort," she said. I spent hours on that cushion, feeling the sun on my fur, watching Myrtle putter around her garden or read in her lawn chair. It was around this time that Myrtle started having senior moments, as Edith called them. She'd put the milk in the cupboard instead of the refrigerator. She'd call me Frank sometimes, then catch herself and laugh nervously. "Sorry, Marlowe. My mind's playing tricks." The winter I turned 12 was when everything changed. Myrtle fell on the icy front steps while bringing in the mail. I watched through the window as she lay there, not moving at first, then slowly pulling herself up. She managed to get inside but was in obvious pain. Edith came over after Myrtle called her, and they went to the hospital together. Myrtle came home with a cast on her hip and a walker. Her home health aide named Josephine started coming 3 times a week. Josephine was kind but brisk, efficiently helping Myrtle with bathing and exercises. She liked me well enough, but was allergic, so she kept her distance. "You're going to have to be extra good," Myrtle told me that first night home. "No getting underfoot, you hear? I can't afford another fall." I was careful after that, watching where I walked, sleeping at the foot of the bed instead of by her side. Myrtle recovered slowly. By spring, she was using a cane instead of a walker, and Josephine's visits decreased to once a week. But something had changed. Myrtle seemed more fragile somehow, as if the fall had taken more than just her mobility. She tired easily, napped frequently, and sometimes forgot to feed me until I reminded her. One day, Myrtle's daughter Patricia arrived unannounced. She and Myrtle had a long talk in the kitchen while I listened from the hallway. Words like assisted living and can't manage alone floated out. Myrtle's voice grew firm. "This is my home, Patty, mine and Marlowe's. I'm not leaving." Patricia stayed for 3 days, arranging for more help, installing grab bars in the bathroom, moving Myrtle's bedroom downstairs to the former sewing room. Before she left, she knelt down to pet me. "Take care of her," she said quietly. "She won't listen to us, but she listens to you." Life adjusted again. A woman named Rose now came every day to help with cooking and cleaning. Myrtle had a medical alert button she wore around her neck, though she often forgot to put it on. Her doctor visits became more frequent, and she returned from each one with new pills to add to her growing collection. I was getting older too. My joints ached in cold weather, and I couldn't jump onto the counters anymore. My once orange fur was now streaked with grey, especially around my face. Myrtle noticed. "We're quite the pair of old-timers, aren't we?" she said one evening as we sat together on the sofa, me purring on her lap while she watched her mystery shows. Last winter was particularly harsh. The snow piled up outside, and the house was often chilly, despite the heating being on full blast. Myrtle developed a cough that wouldn't go away. Rose insisted she see the doctor, but Myrtle kept putting it off. "Hey, it's just a cold, for heaven's sake," she'd say. but I could hear the rattle in her chest, see the effort it took for her to move from room to room. Eventually, David came and took her to the hospital. I stayed alone in the house for 3 days, Rose coming by to feed me and clean my litter box. When Myrtle returned, she was using oxygen from a portable tank, and a new machine was installed in her bedroom to help her breathe at night. Just temporary, she assured me, but her eyes told a different story. I stayed close to her after that, sleeping on the bed, despite the noise from the machine, watching her face for signs of distress. Spring came, but Myrtle didn't plant her garden. Maybe next year, she said, looking out at the empty beds where tomatoes should be growing. She spent most days in her recliner by the window, reading or dozing, her oxygen tank humming quietly beside her. Visitors came more frequently now. David and Patricia took turns staying for weekends. The grandchildren, now teenagers, were quieter around her, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace. Edith came every day, bringing casseroles and news from town. Myrtle's minister stopped by on Thursdays, and they would talk quietly while I watched from my cushion. One afternoon in early summer, Myrtle had me brought to the veterinarian. Dr. Cooper was gentle as always, examining me thoroughly. "He's doing well for 16, he told Myrtle. "Arthritis, of course, and his kidneys aren't what they used to be, but he's still got life in him." Myrtle nodded, stroking my head. "Good," she said. "I need him to stick around a while longer." 2 months ago, Myrtle's breathing became worse. The oxygen tank was a constant companion now. Patricia wanted her to move to her house in Connecticut, but Myrtle refused. "I'm staying right here, where I belong," she insisted. A hospital bed was delivered and set up in the living room near the window where she could see her garden and the bird feeder. That's where we are now. Myrtle spends most of her time sleeping. When she's awake, she talks to me more than ever, telling me stories I've heard dozens of times before. About meeting Frank, about her first classroom, about the time she found a baby raccoon in the garage and raised it until it was old enough to release. I listen to every word, memorizing the sound of her voice. The hospice nurse Linda comes daily now. She's kind and speaks to me directly, which I appreciate. "Marlowe's been right by her side," she told David last week. "Animals know. They always know." 3 nights ago, Myrtle had a bad spell. Her breathing became labored, and Linda was called in the middle of the night. I watched from the foot of the bed as they adjusted her medication. When things calmed down, and Myrtle was resting easier, Linda noticed me. "He hasn't left her side," she said to Rose, who had also come over. "Cats often stay close when the end is near." That's when I heard Myrtle's voice, weak but clear. "He's not waiting for me to die. He's giving me a reason to live." The room went quiet. Myrtle's hand reached out, finding my fur. "Aren't you Marlowe?" I moved closer, curling up against her side the way I had that very first night 14 years ago. I purred as loudly as my old body would allow. Myrtle's fingers gently scratched behind my ears. "Everyone thinks he's just a cat," she whispered, "but he's been my best friend." Yesterday, Myrtle's family gathered. They spoke in hushed tones, made phone calls in the kitchen, took turns sitting beside her bed. I remained in my spot, moving only when necessary. Patricia brought me food and water on a small plate, placing it where I could reach it without leaving Myrtle's side. "Thank you," she whispered to me, "for everything." Last night, when everyone else had gone to sleep in various rooms of the house, Myrtle woke up. The moonlight was streaming through the window, casting long shadows across the floor. She didn't reach for her oxygen, didn't call for help. Instead, she turned her head toward me. "Marlowe," she said, her voice surprisingly strong, "I need to tell you something important." I moved closer, placing my paw on her hand. "You don't have to stay until the end. I know it's what cats do. They stay with their people when it's time. But I want you to know it's okay to go on. David and Patty will make sure you're cared for." I blinked slowly at her, the way cats do when we're saying, "I love you." She smiled. "You showed up exactly when I needed you." After Frank died, I didn't think I could love anything again. But there you were, this skinny orange cat on my porch asking to be let in. She paused, catching her breath. "You gave me 14 more years, Marlowe. 14 years I might not have had if you hadn't found me. So thank you." Her eyes filled with tears. "And when it's time, don't be afraid. Frank will be waiting for me. And someday I hope I'll see you again too." I stretched forward to touch my nose to her cheek, tasting the salt of her tears. She laughed softly, always comforting me, even now. Her hand stroked down my back. I love you, my good boy, my very good boy. This morning, Myrtle is sleeping peacefully. The family is gathered in the kitchen, speaking with Linda about final arrangements. I remain here by Myrtle's side, where I belong. I don't know how much time we have left together. Hours, days, maybe even weeks if we're lucky. What I do know is that I won't leave her, not until she tells me it's truly time. So you see, we cats don't stay by your beds waiting for you to die. We stay to make sure you know you're loved until the very end. We stay because that's what family does. We stay because sometimes having someone to care for gives you the strength to hold on just a little longer. Myrtle taught me about love and loyalty, and finding joy in simple things. She gave me a home when I had none, comfort when I was afraid, and friendship when we both needed it most. The least I can do is be here for her final journey, whenever it may come. If you're reading this and you have a cat of your own, please know that we understand more than you think. We see your tears. We feel your joy. We know when you need us close and when you need space. The bond between a cat and their person isn't just about food and shelter. It's about two souls recognizing something in each other, something worth cherishing. Myrtle once told me that love is what makes a house a home. She was right. This house on Cedar Lane has been filled with love for 14 years, through winters and summers, through illness and health, through sadness and contentment. Whatever happens next, nothing can take away the home we built together. As I finish this letter, Myrtle is stirring. Her eyes are opening and she's reaching for my paw. I need to go now to be present for whatever time we have left. But remember this, if you ever see an elderly cat sitting vigil by someone's bed, don't assume they're waiting for death. They're holding space for life, for every precious moment that remains. With a heart full of memories, Marlo P.S. Myrtle just whispered to me that tomorrow she wants to sit in the garden again. She thinks she might plant tomatoes after all. Maybe there's still time for one more summer together. I'm going to believe there is,